I gotta give Tom Grossi some props. Okay, sometimes we joke about Grossi and give him a hard time. He did an episode yesterday where he just laid it out straight up and he didn't worry about it. And I told him he earned our subscription. So we officially, Hafeman Brothers officially subscribed to the Grossi Posse podcast today. Ben, you weren't involved in that decision. Sorry. But I thought with what he said yesterday, he deserved it. He deserved it for sure. You okay with that?
Sure.
Okay. I hope he does the same for us. That would be awesome. But I don't know. Anyway, here's some things you should check out.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ben.
Well, I watched it, so he just said all the things that a normal human being with any type of empathy or common sense would say. And then I was looking at the comments, and there's still people who are like, you're just shut up and blah. Like, I don't get, it's just crazy. The whole, I don't know. I told you before we started, I don't want to say too much because I know I'm going to say some things that are going to make people really mad. So I'm just going to keep my mouth shut.
The world's a crazy place right now, man.
Yeah, but it's just, I mean, it all comes down to, can you put yourself in someone else's shoes? Like, that's all it is. If you were like them, how would you feel? It's that simple. And if you aren't able to do that, then what type of person are you? It has nothing to do with, how you were raised or what you were taught, and, bigotry and things like that, aren't something you're born with. It's something that that's conditioned into you from either the way you were raised or even like school and other, just your area you were born and raised in and all that kind of stuff. But if you can listen and put yourself in that someone else's position and try to understand what they're going through, that's really all you have to do. If you do that, then everyone should be able to understand the outrage that people are feeling right now. And the fact that some people are still not understanding it, and they're still like pushing people aside and pushing people's feelings aside, and also like talking down to them, or like their first reaction to these things is, like, oh, well, you should listen to what you're told to do, and don't run away, and don't do this and don't do that. And they use that to justify the reason why all these shootings are happening. And it's like, that doesn't justify anything. You have to put yourself in another person's shoes. That's all there is to it. And there's a movie, I hate to bring this up because of the title of the movie, but it's one of my favorite movies. It's one of the reasons why Matthew McConaughey became one of my favorite actors. And its title of the movie is terrible for this situation, but I have to bring it up because of the scene at the end. The movie's called The Time to Kill, which is not a good thing to say at this time. But in the movie, there's a 10-year-old girl who gets raped and beat on her way home from the grocery store. And the two people that do this leave her on the side of the road thinking that she's like dead or she's going to die eventually. But she survives. And then her father like just goes nuts and he murders the two guys that did it. And then the whole movie is based on, him going to trial and all this kind of stuff. And it happens that the two guys that raped and murdered the girl are white and the girl is black. And the father is played by Samuel L. Jackson, who's black.
And it's in the South.
Right. But it's a fictional story. It's based on a book, but the thing that I want to bring up is Matthew McConaughey plays the only lawyer who will take the case because everybody else is too afraid to take the case. And there's an all-white jury. You can't get any African Americans on the jury, all this kind of stuff. Goes through the whole court system. And then at the end, when he's giving his final, whatever it is, his post speech or whatever, whatever lawyers do at the end, he descriptively talks about everything that girl went through. He says, this girl She's walking home with groceries, coming home from the store to bring home to her family's house. Blah blah blah. Goes in detail about all the things that happened. Okay. And then when you're watching the movie, of course, you see the people in the jury box and the women are crying and the men are solemn and everybody's sad. And then at the end, he says, first of all, he tells them all to close their eyes. And then he just reads the whole description, blah, blah, blah. And he says the whole thing. And then at the end, he says, now picture that girl white. And that's when all of the people are just like, whoa. And it has, and you shouldn't have to do that. But it's getting to what I'm getting to is people need to stop. I don't know what it is, but they're not able to look and see things from other people's point of view. And to be honest, like I said this back when we had the episode with Browner, where, I hardly know any black people, really. I mean, we grew up in an all white town. We had a couple acquaintances here and there, but that was it. And I never had to deal with any of this kind of stuff. And I never really knew anybody close enough that told me about these sort of things. So when the George Floyd thing happened, it really opened my eyes in a way, and I was actually listening to a bunch of people, and it didn't change my opinion, but it just helped me realize why people would be so upset and are afraid to even like do anything, right? And that kind of helps if you can do that, if you can just kind of listen to what these people are going through. And I think that's what Jason, you're going to talk about that, right? About the different things you watched this week and whatever. That's really all I have to say about it. It's just a thing where people need to be able to look through someone else's eyes. And if you can do that, I think almost everybody, it's just a common sense thing of just empathy. What would you do if it was you, or if it was your son, if it was your brother or your father or your child or whatever it is? And don't worry about what color people are or what all this other stuff is. Things need to change, whatever it is. I don't know how, I don't know when or how. It's not going to happen in a day, but something needs to happen. And I think if anybody just puts themselves in the other person's shoes of a colored person, I think they could honestly agree with the outrage and agree with the reason why they want the change. And it shocks me when I see, the comments in these videos, like in Tom Gross's video and other people's videos. Like Agent Amos put out tweets the other day and got a bunch of terrible, reactions to his tweet. And it's just ridiculous. These people are like, just shut up and play ball and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And we don't want to hear your stuff about this. And they saying it's a political thing. It's not political. It's human being stuff. It's got nothing to do with politics. It has to do with just being alive. And then Christian Kirksey said something today that was awesome. He said, when you have a football team, you got people from all over the United States, all different races and colors and whatever, religions, sexual orientations even. And he's like, we all get together and we form one unit to win a game. And he's like, so why is it so hard for everybody to get together just to win life? That's just an awesome quote they had today. So I don't know what else I'm done. I'll shut up for the rest of the thing. So boom, back to you, Jace.
Well, we'll get into a little bit of that part before too, about the sports and how this is interwoven and everything else. But to save some time, I'm going to ask you to take a little of your own time, and here's some things you should check out if you haven't seen them. Tom Grossi's video from yesterday, not today, but from Thursday. Troy Vincent, former Badger, should have been Packer, who then became the head of the NFLPA and now is like the vice president of some big deal in the NFL, right? Representing the players. Troy Vincent was interviewed on a radio interview. It was that new like Key, J. Will, and whatever somebody show on ESPN, but you can find a Troy Vincent interview. And he spoke about they asked him about all this stuff, and he just lost it. He has 3 kids. He's got 3 sons. He's got to face this stuff. They got to face it. And the perspective and everything else that he brought to it, and the emotion, and in just hearing a person that's as accomplished as him, incredible NFL player, incredible success still in the NFL as a business person. And he, he couldn't hold it together for this thing. And he knew he was going to do the interview, but that's raw emotion. That's the type of situation, emotion, and things that people of color have to deal with. That's the mindset they have to have all the time. Think about, like, here, just trying to get you to think about this. Think about the craziness that we've dealt with, right? With the pandemic and with all these sacrifices we made and all these changes we've had to make in our life and all that stuff, right? And that's weighed on us, right? Because it's a big change and it's stuff that stressors and things we had to think about. Think about this, think about doing that. What did you touch? What did you, whatever? Are you washing your hands all the time? Are you doing all these things? Think about a situation similar to that and your attention to detail and the stress of it, but you can never get away from it just because of the way you look. That's what white people have to realize. That's what white people have to think about. Doc Rivers also gave a really impactful brief, it's 3 minutes. Just said what he felt after some of this stuff had happened. And again, he said something so important. He said, as Black people, because this has gone on for hundreds of years, right? Hundreds of years. He said, we keep loving this country, but the country will not love us back. And that's what Black people feel like. And they should, based on all this stuff. And again, people are going to bring up, they were criminals and this guy was a criminal. Did you see his record? And maybe he was going for a gun. It doesn't mean they should be shot and killed. This isn't the Wild West anymore. And a dude getting shot 7 times in the back is not a police strategized shooting of someone who might be a danger to them. That's losing it as a law enforcement official. You don't shoot somebody 7 times in the back because they weren't listening to you and they fought with you a little bit and stuff like that. You shoot them in the leg once, so you disable them a little bit, and then you cuff them, and then you take them in. You don't shoot a dude 7 times in the back because you're trying to defend yourself or you're concerned about them maybe getting to a weapon when the guy was barely getting into his car. Anyway, the other one that I thought was just great perspective, and I was never a huge Chris Webber fan, but Chris Webber and Stan Van Gundy, through TNT and through Turner Broadcasting, they went to those two guys to bring some perspective after, when the games were all canceled the other day, when the Bucs stepped out. And you have to listen to that. You have to listen to what Chris Webber says. As a dude who grew up in the inner city in Detroit and then had incredible success and now lives a very different life than what he grew up in. And then Stan Van Gundy as a white guy who's coached primarily in a Black dominated sport, and his perspective of all this, like, he can't understand. None of us can understand what Black people go through, or other minorities that are looked down upon or held back or trivialized or worse. Right. But Stan Van Gundy gave great perspective about how within the circles of basketball, how things operate and how you get to know a bunch of these people. And it's not, and I said this in my other podcast, like, there are great people and there are terrible people of all different colors and makes and backgrounds. So judging people or doing things to them or being afraid of them just because of the color of their skin or the way they look, that's just plain wrong. There's plenty of white people that are big, huge jerks or worse. And there's plenty of other people that don't look anything like us that are awesome people. I need to know more of them. I'm going to say that about myself. Because like Ben said, I don't have enough Black friends either, or friends of even other ethnicities. I've got some Mexican friends and they're great. I've got some Asian friends and they're awesome. And I've got a couple of black friends, but I don't even know enough black people. And why is that? I need to put myself out there more and reach out within those communities and get more involved. And I'm going to plan to do that too. But the Packers have been, bringing this back to the Packers, bringing this to the NFL. The Packers have been on the front of this right away since some of this stuff happened again. And Matt LaFleur had another big press conference this week. Packers, came in on Thursday and then he let them all go. He just said they had a big discussion, no practice. And I don't know, Ekis, what you think about what the Packers have done, but they're really kind of at the forefront of stepping out and saying, this stuff is not okay. We are going to not just denounce it in our own time. As an organization, we're stepping out to take some action, to take some steps, and to continue to talk about it. So how do you feel about, you're a part owner, right?
Yeah, of course.
How do you feel about your Packers, man?
I like the precedent they're setting. I like their views are more in line with my views. The thing that I struggle with, and I'll backtrack a little bit, because with this whole social injustice thing, and I live in Marshfield. There's probably a dozen black people that live in this whole town. And, I don't know many of them. I have a kid here and there, and there's some Spanish and Mexican families here and some Hmong families here. Whatever. I teach whoever is in my class. It's fine. And when I taught in Middleton, I taught at the school that was West Middleton, which was 60% African American. So we had a big population, bunch of great kids, bunch that needed to be hit by a dodgeball, and I took care of both of them. But up here, I just want to know what, because you guys know me, you know that I don't support any of this stuff. You feel like your hands are tied. What can you do? There's not people here that I'm not at a place where I can say, hey, here's a couple grand, put that to good use for social. I can't do that. But, you want to know what's the next step. I'm happy to stand up for anybody. If I saw something that I didn't think was right, I'd walk right over and say something. But that's not the case here. You just don't see anything like that because everybody around me is a white person. So what the Packers are doing, I'm going in a circle here, but what the Packers are doing, using their platform to try and promote what they can, I appreciate that. And I think that that's a smart thing to do. And I listened to something on Aaron Rodgers. I'm sure you did too, because you guys watch a lot more than I do. But he said, sometimes you just sit and listen. Instead of talking and having a comment, you just sit back and you have to just listen and not talk, you just have to pay attention, not tune out and have your own predispositions. You sit back and you listen to what people are saying, what they're going through. And I think that's what makes Aaron Rodgers such a special human being in person, is his perspective of that. He'll do that. He'll sit back and listen, and he doesn't always talk and go off and get all the hot takes and stuff flying out of his mouth before he sits and listens and thinks and uses his head. And I think as a society, we need a little bit more of that, because I think people are just so reactionary right now and talk before they say anything. And, the other thing that is a problem is this. Everything you say, everything you do now, it's somewhere. Can you imagine if we had cell phones and all this crap when I was in college?
You'd be in trouble.
Still be locked up.
Different. Never anything bad. I like
nothing
never
bad or dangerous.
Just a lot of embarrassing situations for you.
Never anything bad, but just a lot of really dumb things over and over and over.
When you try to squeeze into those Captain America underoos, you should.
Those are Darth Maul.
Oh, okay, all right.
Nick's probably still got those.
Yeah, I think he still wears them
on his head.
So sorry, I went off a little bit, right? But
no, that's
the question was, I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
To show support, it's I guess I feel a little bit like almost useless sometimes in this situation.
People have to understand, the people that are reacting big to like, wow, why now? Why all of a sudden because of this person? It's not about George Floyd. It's not about any of the individuals. Like, yes, they will use their names sometimes because those are the most recent things. It's about this whole situation. It's about what's been going on for ever and ever, and it hasn't changed. And Billy Turner, in a long interview today, said those things. Why that's one of the reasons why he also thought, the boycotting games in football didn't make sense. He's like, no, what good is that going to do? It's going to make a bunch of people miss football and be mad about missing football. But what we can do is the reason we keep saying things, the reason we're going to keep demonstrating during the national anthem, which I know some people still don't like and get all upset about because they take it the wrong way, is because nothing has changed. Show us that things are starting to change, and then we can stop demonstrating, is basically what he was saying. And that's why. And it's because it's gone on for so long. It's interesting. President Obama had a speech during the Democratic National Convention, and one of the things he talked about, and he got pretty emotional during that speech, even though he holds it together really well, was that, if there was ever a time, or if there was ever a group, I'm paraphrasing a bit, of people who shouldn't think this democracy or this country should work, it's all of those people. It's the Black people. It's all of the minority groups that were oppressed and that didn't have a fair shot, but they still believe in our country. So if they can still believe, we got to believe, and we got to come together, and we got to figure this stuff out as humans, not as Black people and white people and Asian people and whatever. We got to come together as humans and Americans and do it. So get behind the unifying speech, stay away from the divisive stuff and the hate speech and the anger and the fear. Again, no one ever made a good decision when they were angry, afraid, or, just completely out of their minds and with one of those emotions. So stay away from that stuff. Think about other people who are just like you, who want the same things, who want to have a place to live and a job and not to worry about all these other things and have food to eat and whatever, and who want to enjoy football like us. And doesn't matter what they look like. They want all that same stuff too.